Hello! This is Jacob again, and it's time for another fanfic reading. This time, I'm doing a reading of The Two Princesses by J. David. Enjoy!
If one were to look at this place from a great distance, they would be forgiven for assuming that what they saw was some great jewel sparkling on the horizon. But this domain was no mere piece of jewelry. This was the Crystal Empire, a sprawling city that, like the name suggested, was composed of shining crystal, glittering beautifully in the sunlight of this clear and bountiful day. And as for the ponies, they too shone well, looking as if magic itself was imbued within them. Indeed, when people entered this place for the first time, what else can they do but stand in awe at the beauty and majesty of it all? But for the ponies there, they seemed happy here, content and satisfied, as few, if any, went about their day without a smile upon their faces. Greetings of good morning were abound, and for all there, this was simply another normal day. That is, until they saw her. At first, it seemed like just a small collection of ponies at the city gates. But then, that group grew larger and larger. Eventually, almost every pony in the city knew what was going on, and so rushed out en masse to see the new arrivals. 2 rows of perfectly ordered equestrian guards, clad in a distinct golden armor, were now marching down the main street of the city, with the many passersby smiling at the sight of them. At their head was a blue stallion unicorn, similarly armored, though he had elected to go without their traditional helmet. But it was the one currently being escorted that now drew the most attention, Princess Celestia. Many ponies in the street bowed to her as she passed, and she in turn smiled to all of them. Truly, this was a grand and pleasantly surprising visit for all concerned. But there eventually came a time when the princess had moved beyond the adoring crowds, beyond the main street, and now stood before the pristine and impressively tall castle at the center of the city. For a time, she simply stopped and stared at it, her smile wavering as she did so. Then she heard some pony clearing their throat, causing her to look down at the blue unicorn stallion. Understanding, Celestia nodded, and once more the procession began to move in line with her. As they drew nearer, the unicorn guards on either side of the castle gates used their magic to open it up, and now both the princesses and her entourage were within the grand palace. Many of the servants and attendants inside stopped what they were doing, looking to the alicorn with awe. But it was not long before the silence of this place was interrupted by a sudden loud calling out.
Princess Celestia, a pleasure to see you again.
Smiling, Celestia turned, seeing the one who had spoken. It was another unicorn stallion, dark gray in his fur and with a jet-black mane, adorned with a regal-looking cape of deep purple. He looked to the princess with true joy, giving a low bow to her as she drew nearer.
It has been too long.
Celestia nodded, bowing her head to him.
And it's good to see you, Prime Minister.
Raising himself, the stallion spoke up yet again.
I have been looking forward to your visit all day, as has my wife.
To that, Celestia began to look around.
Yes, where is Radiant?
Right here, Your Majesty.
Again, Celestia turned, and now spotted a unicorn mare approaching from behind the Prime Minister, with purple fur and a blue mane. The minister looked to her with great affection, which Radiant was quick to return, before she then gave a like-minded bow to the princess.
I trust your journey went well.
Celestia nodded.
Indeed it did, Radiant. It's always nice to see you.
Radiant smiled wider.
Likewise, though I take it you didn't just come here to catch up.
Celestia sighed, shaking her head.
I wish it were otherwise. But no.
But for now, she shook herself out of that brief bout of seriousness, resuming her smile and gesturing to the blue stallion beside her.
You both remember my Captain Nightlight?
The stallion gave a salute, to which the minister gave a quick bow of his head.
Ah, yes.
A smirk crossed his face.
I'm guessing you still can't blow a decent flugelhorn, Knight?
Knight returned the smirk.
Better than you, Sombra.
There was, as expected, a long round of laughter between the four ponies, which eased things in this place considerably, as many of the other crystal ponies took this moment to get back to whatever work they had been doing prior to Celestia's arrival. However, when the laughter died down, Sombra looked to the white alicorn, letting out a sigh before gesturing to the large door on the other side of the hall to them.
She's waiting.
Celestia, gaining a somewhat serious look herself, nodded.
All right then. Lead the way, Prime Minister.
The large collection of ponies now moved in unison, heading towards the large and ornate crystal doors that lay every end of that enormous hallway. As was the case with the palace's external gates, there were likewise 2 unicorn guards here also, who gave a quick salute before lighting up their horns, leading to the opening of these impressive doors. Celestia, upon seeing these doors open, immediately started to smile again, for she now beheld the magnificent throne room of the Crystal Palace. But it was not the mere splendor of this palace that caused her to look on in awe. It was the genuine sense of happiness she felt when she saw the one sitting at the end of this room, looking majestic and regal upon her throne. It was another unicorn mare, though this one was far taller, practically akin to Celestia herself in terms of height, and bore a flowing pink mane. As she and her companions drew closer, there came a time when her followers halted their movements, allowing the princess herself to take a few steps ahead of them. When she reached the base of the throne, she and this other mare stared at each other for a time. Then, at the end of it all, they smiled to one another.
It is good to see you again, Celestia.
Celestia nodded.
And you, Princess Amore.
Gracefully, Amore lifted herself from her throne, before slowly walking down the steps to greet her guest.
How long has it been, old friend? A year? 2?
Celestia chuckled.
Too long.
Sighing, Amore's smile faded somewhat.
Well, I suppose we might as well get down to business. Your message said this was of the utmost importance?
Like Amore, Celestia's smile also faltered, and she gave a short nod.
Yes, I have been thinking a great deal on this, and I believe it is an appropriate time for the Kingdom of Equestria and the Crystal Empire to improve relations.
Silence fell over both of them and the rest of the throne room, with many there bearing looks of confusion over what had been said. While many were nonplussed as to what Celestia had meant, Sombra and Radiant looked to one another, their expressions making it clear that they did know what was going on, and that it concerned them deeply. Eventually, and after careful consideration, Amore let out yet another sigh, turning to her Prime Minister.
Sombra, I believe the princess and I require some privacy.
Immediately, the stallion got the message, nodding to his leader and giving her a quick bow before making a sweeping gesture to the rest of the court. Celestia's guards, led by Nightlight, gave her a salute before turning around and starting to march out of the chamber. As for Radiant, she stayed behind briefly to give her princess one final concerned look, before then walking alongside her husband. After waiting for a time, only the 2 princesses remained, and here Amore frowned.
Let me guess, dear. You wish for our domains to make an official alliance?
Celestia looked away.
You know why, Ami.
Nodding, Amore started to walk away from her guest, heading instead to one of the many windows on either side of the throne room.
I take it your sister's return to the fray has upset you?
Looking to her, Celestia was now the one to frown.
Luna is up to something. I just know it.
Having reached the window, Amore looked out at the city below, to her subjects going about their lives in the streets.
Dear, all these long centuries, you have had one fear above all else, that your sister would return and bring harm to your kingdom.
She turned, looking the Alicorn right in the eye.
But she's still your sister. Centuries apart does not change that fact.
Celestia, having heard that, took a few steps toward her colleague.
Us being sisters has not kept her from making her power plays against me, Ami. Do you not remember how she took...
She paused, a pained look crossing her face as she glanced away from Amore.
How she took her away from me?
Amore's expression softened, and she moved closer to Celestia, gently placing her hoof upon her shoulder.
My friend, you and I both know Luna never took any pony. The one you speak of, she left of her own accord. Leaving was her choice, as was the decision to take up with your sister.
Looking back to her, Celestia's expression was a serious one.
Luna dabbles in dark ways, Ami. You know that. Those who stray into such paths cannot be trusted.
Again, Amore sighed.
Dear, you forget. I too know what it's like to have those close to you partake of darker forces. But I also know that this alone does not condemn them to a life of evil.
Here, Celestia paused, looking over her shoulder to the door that Sombra and the others had exited through. Considering her friend's words, her expression seemed to relent, at least a little bit. But it wasn't long afterwards when she looked to Amore with seriousness yet again.
Regardless of her nature, there is no doubt that her decision to end her nation's isolationism brings ill tidings.
Amore raised an eyebrow.
Does it? I would have hoped you'd welcome a chance to reconnect with those long-lost ponies.
Celestia rolled her eyes.
Perhaps were they led by any pony else. I know my sister better than you, Ami. She would not involve her ponies with ours after this long in hiding without reason. I just don't know what that reason is.
Nodding, Amore started to walk along the line of windows, with Celestia beside her as she did so.
I have no doubt she may have some long-term plan in mind. But war? No, not even Luna would go that far.
Celestia's eyes narrowed.
One who would forsake the title of princess and choose the mantle of queen is unlikely to be the kind of mare who is above such ambitions.
Amore chuckled, gaining Celestia's attention as she spoke.
Title need not mean such things, Celestia. Remember, my domain is a crystal empire. Yet we have but one city-state.
Here, at the very least, Celestia cracked a smile.
You always know how to lighten the mood, Ami.
The two mares joined together in this laughter for a time, but sadly, that too ended in due course. And as they finally stopped walking, Amore turned to her guest with a more businesslike expression.
Dear, I know you fear for your people. I would never criticize you for that. But this alliance you seek, I fear it would only bring about more harm than good.
Celestia looked to her critically.
My sister's nation is powerful, Amore. Should she seek to extend her reach beyond her border, an alliance between our two domains might be what it takes to deter her.
Amore nodded.
Perhaps. Or perhaps she would instead view such a union at this critical moment as an overt act of aggression, a preemptive plan to do away with her. Perhaps she would see it as a threat so great that she has to take action, provoking her into that very conflict you fear most.
Celestia paused, taking that in, while still bearing her concerned look. Amore took note of this, and so lost her serious demeanor, instead looking to her friend with a genuine smile.
Celestia, you have always feared the worst when it comes to your sister. But consider, she and those who follow her have remained where they are, never harming any pony, for 1,000 years. It is highly unlikely that she would seek to make you her enemy after all that.
Hearing that, Celestia sighed, looking away.
Twilight said the same thing once.
As before, Amore nodded.
She always was wise beyond her years.
She cracked a smile.
That is why you chose her as your apprentice, is it not?
Briefly, a flicker of guilt crossed Celestia's eyes after hearing that particular statement, which Amore noticed, yet chose not to comment on it. Eventually, and after seeming rather uncomfortable for a time, Celestia gave a slow nod.
Perhaps you are right, Ami. With things the way they are, I suppose I let my fears get the better of me.
Amore smiled wider than before.
It happens to the best of us, old friend. But take heart, her Equestria and the Crystal Empire have always been close friends. And alliance or not, I see no reason why that should stop now.
Looking to her, Celestia returned the smile.
Well, I suppose now that that's settled, I have a somewhat disappointing journey back home awaiting me.
To that, Amore let out a brief laugh.
Think nothing of the sort, dear. My realm will be glad to have you and your esteemed followers here to visit for a day or two.
Again, she placed a hoof upon Celestia's shoulder.
Please, stay for a little bit. Enjoy the sights and the sounds of the Empire.
Looking at least a little bit more relaxed, Celestia smiled to her friend.
Yes, I think I would like that.
Nodding, a thought occurred to Amore, causing her to grimace a little bit.
Just as long as that captain of yours doesn't start playing any of our flugelhorns. I hear he was terrible at it.
Looking to her fellow princess, Celestia now bore a knowing smirk.
Well, in all fairness, Velvet didn't marry him for his musical talent.
So, that was my reading of The Two Princesses. I hope you enjoyed it. And special thanks to True Sailor Comet for voicing Princess Celestia, ZD for voicing Princess Amore, Bobby G for voicing Prime Minister Sombra, Cassatarius for voicing Radiant Hope, and Seraph Pilcrow for voicing Nightlight. Anyway, thanks for watching, and this is Jacob, signing off.